Hey everybody, Crew Chief Eric here. So in the recent couple weeks, I've had some discussions with people about shifting and manual cars and things like that, and being smoother in general about driving. And so I grew up driving cars from the 70s and the 80s, dogleg first gears, heavy manual clutches and things like that. And so obviously as technology has progressed, things have gotten better. But, a friend of mine recently complained that, he was driving an older vehicle and he said, man, this transmission is super notchy. And I said, well, there's some old school techniques that still work even on a more modern car from the last 20 years. So I wanted to put together a little video to talk about this and show you some of the footwork as we go along here. And a couple of things we talked about is on the older transmissions, it's really important that you get the synchros lined up when you're driving to have the smoothest possible ride for your passengers as possible. I see a lot of people that don't have mechanical sympathy. They're really hard. They like to speed shift. The faster they shift, the faster they think they're going. And it's really not about that. It's about matching engine speed and transmission speed to be right in the torque band and keep the motor spun up where it needs to go. And so that being said, obviously the first step is always put your foot on the clutch when you start the car to make sure that you're not going to hit anybody that's in front of you, etc. The next big thing is with older vehicles and even newer vehicles, and especially German transmissions, it's really important to do something that seems a little bit odd. Pull the shifter towards your hip in second gear and then put it in first. What that actually does is it lines up the synchros between second and first gear. You won't get that crunch feeling at a stoplight when you put the car in first. The other thing is when you come to a stoplight, you should always stop in second gear. Then again, now you're in second and you can put it in first. If you're coming to a light and crunching it into first gear, you're destroying the first gear synchro. The other thing that happens is a lot of people are really rough between first and second gear. And the way you eliminate that is by blip up shifting. And so in between shifts, you actually give it a little bit more gas, feather your foot to up the revs, and then match the transmission and engine speed, and then it goes right in. It's the reverse of a heel toe downshift. It's something you have to practice. It's something you can do at speed. It's not really that big of a deal. The other thing to note is that when you are shifting, you want to be very deliberate in your actions. Again, mechanical sympathy is really important. If you want your transmission to last, you want your clutch to last, these techniques will help you along the way. Another thing we were discussing is when you're taking off, again, second gear into first, if you know how to heel toe, it's very easy to take off from a hill. The thing I learned and the way I was taught was to basically play with the pedals to learn where the grab point is for the clutch. But in order to do that, you don't just press and go and press and go. You actually feather the throttle. And so you're blipping the throttle to take off, and then you can catch the clutch and you learn where the clutch pedal is. I could sit here all day and rock the car back and forth without really ever moving and grabbing and disengaging the clutch. I'm not doing any harm. What I'm learning is exactly where the catch point is. I do this in every new car I get into, whether it's something vintage, whether it's something new, borrowed, and so in between. But again, the principle is still the same. Second gear into first, nice and smooth. You'll feel how smooth it is going into first. Blip the throttle and then just take off. So we're going to get out of this little area here. It's a little bit tight this morning, but that's okay. And even when you're kind of just rolling, disengage the clutch, blip the throttle, get back into it. I was taught that it's very important to make sure that your passengers are always comfortable, because growing up in an era where there were more manual cars than there were automatics, and driving lowered stiff cars, the ride was already pretty harsh to begin with. So if you can mitigate one part of your passengers' comfortability, that's super important. So blip between first and second, it just drops right into second gear. Again, I'm coming to a stop, I am so used to heel toe because of the track that I do it all the time, and you'll see that in the video. But what you'll also notice from the footwork part of this video later is that the engine sounds very smooth. You don't hear any dragging of the clutch. You don't hear any RPM drags or anything like that. It's just super easy. The other thing I want to talk about is you'll notice my hand positions are probably a little bit different than what you're used to. And that's because I've developed the habit of using what's called underhand shifting. And the reason I do that is, and you've probably seen many times or heard stories about people blowing their motors at the track. I mistakenly grabbed second gear instead of fourth, and the motor revved to 9 billion RPM and exploded. The reason that happens is most of us are used to shifting with our fists towards ourselves and then pulling towards our hips from third to fourth, fifth to sixth, etc. And so if you're in a situation where you're trying to move quickly and grab gears, if you go from fifth to fourth this way, pulling your elbow towards your pelvis, towards your hip, you will more than likely mistakenly grab second gear. Instead, if you underhand the shift using the palm or using a flat hand motion, you'll never grab second gear unless you do it on purpose. And you can hear me blipping through my shifts as I upshift. Without heel toeing, you just blip the throttle as you go along. Again, you can see I can grab this thing with 2 fingers, but I'm pushing it away from myself. I'm purposely making sure that I don't grab second gear by accident. Now, downshifting heel toe, it takes time to practice. There's really 2 ways to do it. There's the classic way, which is the proper heel toe, why it's called heel toe, which was developed for Porsches and BMWs, where the pedal comes up from the floor. You physically use your big toe and your heel to hit the brake and the gas at the same time. Now, in a modern vehicle where the pedals drop down from the cluster, you have to use what we call internally goofy foot, which is to keep your foot in a position where you're actually on the accelerator and grabbing the edge of the brake with the inside of the ball of your foot, sort of still with your big toe, but it's a little different, it's a little awkward. Exceptionally large feet. I wear a 9.5 shoe. It's pretty narrow. I'm wearing Vans in this particular video. They're a flat shoe. I could have done this in my driving booties, but I didn't really feel like it. Just to prove the point, those are very, very narrow shoes, but it can still be done. I don't have pedal extenders. I don't have anything special. It's all a matter of practice. And it's a matter of knowing where to grab the brake pedal where you can still make maximum braking pressure and do everything at speed. You also need to be able, why we call it goofy foot, be able to move your foot, kind of walk it across the brake pedal as you're increasing the pressure. Maybe you're trail braking, maybe you're threshold braking, or whatever it might be. So those are things you are used at the track. I've said many times over, if we're going to talk about braking, left foot braking is another technique you don't want to learn at the track, but you can practice it on the street. But you have to do it in a slow environment, back roads where there's not somebody behind you in traffic, things like that. But it's also easier to practice left foot braking on an automatic because you have one less thing to think about and less pedal hopping along the way. So again, if you want to get better at shifting, it's just like driving. It's slow in, fast out. So work on slowing down your hands, slowing down your feet, and then the speed will come later. Quickly drop through the gears and have a completely smooth ride for your passengers along the way. The other thing I always recommend is that people use the dead pedal as much as possible. Do not hover your foot over the clutch, because in an emergency situation, if something happens, you don't want to be both feet in. You want to be ready to downshift or upshift or whatever it is that you're going to do. This is especially important on the track. Know where you are. In some cars, if you don't have harnesses or racing seats, you need to use the dead pedal to brace yourself. The last thing you want to do is brace yourself with the clutch pedal. Again, smoothness comes from within, right? I talk about this all the time in classroom sessions, where in the beginning when you're learning to drive, it's all about, or you're learning to drive high performance, it's all about keeping the car as smooth as possible, being predictable, being consistent. And you can be a little erratic, you can be nervous, you can have anxiety. But at the end of the day, you want to get to the point where you can dance with the car, you can make it do things. It becomes a tool in your toolbox rather than this thing that you're afraid of. So you need to practice, you need to build up to that. What happens though is there's a transition from the car being smooth and you being erratic to the car being more erratic and you being completely smooth and in control and being confident of what the car is capable of doing. But that again takes you back to the basics, right? The most important parts of all of this are those foundational principles of driving and getting rid of bad habits, whether it be shifting, whether it be sawing at the wheel, other things you may have picked up along the way. And when you do go into high performance drivers education, this is where folks like myself and my friends and the folks that are in our organization are here to help you. We're in the right seat. We're not telling you what to do. We're helping you learn how to become a better driver. And that starts with your first lap on track. Saying to yourself, oh, I saw you just overhand that shift. Every once in a while I do, but I'm very deliberate. I'm very careful about how I grab that third to fourth gear shift. I'm not ramming it in there. I'm not trying to speed shift it. Quickly and be smooth. It's all about timing. It's all about timing. It's about getting that rhythm down. Again, I urge all of you, mechanical sympathy is number one. If you want your transmission, your synchros, your clutch to last, try some of these techniques. Heel toe downshiftting, blip up shifting, feathering the throttle as you're coming off the line, starting in second gear before you put it in first, taking off from a stop sign or from a light. hope you enjoyed this video. Look for more tips and tricks on the Grand Touring Motorsports website, or follow us on Twitch, on YouTube, on all the social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and everything in between. And be sure, and if you have questions, be sure to write to us at crewchief@gtmotorsports.org.